This is City Manager Jim Drumm with the City of Brunswick in Depth. In the City of Brunswick and the Golden Isles, summer is closing and fall is beginning. Students are back to school and they're studying all their classes, including history. And I suspect they're learning a little bit about our founding fathers and some such as Benjamin Franklin. And Benjamin Franklin actually is known for a lot of witty sayings. One that's very well famous is, in this world there's nothing certain except death and taxes. So we're going to talk a little bit today about those subjects. I should say actually taxes. If you're interested in the previous subject, we talked about that a couple months ago when we featured our cemeteries. But today we're going to talk about taxes, we're going to talk about our future and what we're planning in our comprehensive plan. So stay with us. Our first guest today is Tina Edwards, and she works in City Hall, and your position is the tax collection specialist, right? Yes. Now, normally when you come on this program and you're new to the program, you haven't been on before, I usually ask people to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you came from and grew up, and how you ended up at the City of Brunswick, and how long you've been here. Oh wow, that's a long story?
Loaded. It is kind of a long story, but I'll try to give you the short version.
Okay.
I grew up in Brunswick, but I was born in Baltimore, Maryland. Oh. So I'm a byproduct of a government family. So we moved up and down the East Coast, but most of my time and growing up years has been right here in the Golden Isles in Glynn County. It's been a lot of time at doing a lot of activities within the city limits and sports and that sort of thing. So I consider Brunswick, Georgia my home. Well, great. Now, normally when I talk to Brunswick natives, I have to ask them which high school they went to. Oh, I'm a pirate. You're a pirate.
Okay. Go Pirates. In fact, it's probably been 50-50 from the people we've talked to. So.
Oh, okay.
But lately, I think more pirates, so I think they're ahead.
Okay, okay.
We're going to talk about, now your job's very new for the city. The city of Brunswick, historically, as a municipal government, was able to collect its taxes and did for many years. But in 2002, the city commission at that time elected to go with the county's tax commissioner to collect our taxes, and they kind of put it on one bill. It was both the county and city taxes. It was a dual statement. Both basically you would get the bill for the city taxes and the county taxes. But this year our commission changed that project, or that program, I should say. They elected to take the tax billing back, yes. And I think they did it because it would save quite a bit of money for the city. We were paying over, I think, $130,000 a year between the payment that we paid our county tax commissioner and then the separate amounts that we had to pay for the administration of it through the county's tax commissioner's office. In a way, it was kind of paying it twice. And I think the commissioners realized it was, being also that we pay county taxes if you're a city resident. And so they felt we could do it more efficient in-house. And I think that's sort of how your position came to be.
Yes.
So now, how long have you been on board?
I have been on board since January of this year.
January of this year. And that's allowed you to get things put in place?
Yes.
We've purchased new software to be able to put together our city tax bill.
Yes.
And so now, this year, will be the first time, I think, since 2002, that city residents will receive 2 tax bills?
That is correct.
Okay. So you've done a little bit of work on how to get prepared. Tell us a little bit about how you got prepared for everything and maybe when we might expect tax bills to come out.
Well, one of the first things that we did get started with the new tax department was to get acquainted with the collection software. And the collection software that we use is called GovCollect. And primarily, I think within the first month, it was a lot of extensive training. I also had to attend some extensive training from the Department of Revenue and the Georgia Municipal Association. So once we got the basis and the information that we needed to really get the ground running, we had to get done rather quickly. I'm confident that we'll be ready and following our project timeline to be ready by or before September 1st. And our aim is to start the billing process by mid-September of this year. And of course, that's always contingent upon the Department of Revenue approving our tax digest. And hopefully everything will work as it's planned and that there will be any delays or disruption for our citizens, as far as citizens in the city, who will be receiving 2 tax bills. They'll receive their county tax bill, which will include a lot of the various capital fund projects, the school board taxes and that sort of thing. They will see their exemptions on the county tax side of their bill. But when they receive a city tax bill, they will see their city tax rates and what their tax is supposed to be, and included in that, which the City Commission recently passed, was their stormwater utility rate, and also they will see their solid waste rates also on their bill. They will be given at least 60 days to pay their bill on receipt. And we are currently in the process of updating our website with all the frequently asked questions, any questions that they may have. It will be on our website. We can always be reached by phone, by email, if they have any questions ahead of that time that they receive their bills. We have different payment options ready and available for the citizens, whether they want to come in person or they want to pay online, or they just want to drop off their bills in our front and rear entrance of our drop boxes. So as we're getting prepared for this first time, and hopefully that it will be a pleasant experience for the citizens of Brunswick. We're looking forward to working with you all, and hopefully everything will go as planned. We're ready to go, everything's in place, and I'm looking forward for this opportunity to meet the citizens. I do reside in the Glenn County area, but again, I grew up and did participate in a lot of activities within the city, and I'm familiar with a lot of the residents here. So I look forward to meeting with everyone as we embark on this new venture.
Well, you've done a lot in the last, 9-10 months here.
Oh, yes.
And I think some people wondered, well, if we were doing this for this year's taxes, why did we bring you on board so early? But there was a lot of preparation involved.
Absolutely.
I mean, like you said, bringing the programs on. And actually, there's a lot of coordination still with the county government.
Yes, there is.
As a city resident, and you said you live in the city?
I actually live in the county.
You live in the county, okay. But I live in the city, and some people live in the city. We pay city and county taxes.
Yes.
And so the county taxes still pay for a lot of the county services that we pay. And as county residents, one was actually the assessor's office. I think people are wondering, what happens if I'm in the city and my house is assessed a different amount than the county assesses it? Am I going to have these off double values? And that's not the case. You work a lot with the tax commissioner even still through that process. And they send that data to us to let us know what the assessment is set at, so we don't have that problem, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So you've had a lot of interaction with those offices throughout the year, and that's something that's natural. That'll happen not just in this transition, I think, but it's probably going to happen each year. Oh, yeah,
absolutely. We work very closely with the County Tax Commission Office and the Tax Assessor's Office. And with the Tax Assessor's Office, they've been ready and available. They provided us with all the data that we need to produce our tax bills. If there are any concerns as far as the market values or any of the assessed values of a citizen's property, they would follow the normal procedure as far as filing any appeals through the tax assessor's office. They are still responsible for that process. Our only responsibility will be as far as collecting and billing, but any questions about your tax bills or any of the calculations as far as assessment values, they would need to approach the Glenn County Tax Assessor's Office for that, or file an appeal.
Would that include homestead exemptions and things such as that?
That is correct.
So they don't have to file separately a homestead exemption with the city and with the county?
That's correct. We'll get them. If they do that, they'll send that information to our department.
Okay. Well, and that makes it a little bit more simpler, so there's not one entity sees it one way, one sees it the other. It's actually shared information.
That is correct. That's thank goodness is set up that way. And
right.
It's definitely better for the citizen as far as having one location for that portion of their taxes. Now,
a moment ago you mentioned sanitation, and that's a fee that the city's assessed for probably the last 6 or 7 years. So I think people were used to seeing that on the bill. And you also talked a little bit about the new stormwater fee.
Yes.
Now that's something that's going to come out that we haven't seen before. It's a new stormwater utility, and people probably may call for questions, and if you get them, I'm sure we can answer some things about it.
Yeah.
But it's primarily the new fee that's charged for stormwater drainage in the community. And that fee is going to be set, there's going to be a set rate, I think, for residents. There's going to be one fee, and it's a flat rate. But for businesses, it's going to vary. So there's going to be a little bit of differences. And you've had a little bit of knowing that this was coming, and it just recently was adopted, so now you've got a little bit of a challenge to get that on the bill before it goes out.
I accept that challenge, and
well, it's been a little bit of work.
Yeah,
you've had to work with you've had to work with engineering to get it on there, but I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
So everybody should see, especially. I mean, let's say I had I owned a small office or something out there, or maybe even a small plaza. I'm going to see this on the bill, and it's going to be based, I think, on the amount of square footage that we have. That actually is what they refer to as impervious surface, where rain collects rainwater and it doesn't have the ability to soak into the ground.
Right. For a lot of your non-residential properties, it will be based on square footage. But as far as residential, it will be based on a flat rate. But we already have that data, and what they'll see on their tax bill, they'll see a separate line item for that, so they'll be able to see exactly how much they'll be paying for that. And of course, if they have any questions, they can certainly contact our office for any additional information. But we've already getting set up for that, so we already knew that was coming, so we wanted to be prepared for that. So we got our vendor and setting up, getting that added to our tax bill. So what will happen is once we have that data and we get ready, we'll send it off to the printers, and they're already ready and prepared for that as well. So we're ready to go when it comes to the stormwater utility fees being added.
Great. So when the bill comes out, people need to remember that there's going to be two bills, not just one. So if they see the county bill and they pay it, they have not really paid all their taxes. And vice versa. They need to pay if the city's ones comes out, they need to pay, also wait for the counties and pay theirs separately. It's not a duplicate statement. That's the message we want to get out to everybody, is that don't think because you paid one, you've paid your taxes. You still would be in danger of the possibility of delinquent taxes or late fees or worse yet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We want to send a strong message, and we'll definitely be in touch with sending out numerous press releases, and we definitely want to educate the public to make sure that they understand, if you're a resident of the city, that you will receive two separate tax bills, and it's very important that you pay both tax bills. If you do not, and think that it's not, or maybe a duplicate as you stated, you would putting your property in jeopardy of a tax sale situation. So we don't want to have to go that direction. Although it takes several months before you even get to a tax sale, but we don't want anyone to have to pay any late fees or penalties that are applied if you don't pay your taxes on time. So we want to encourage the citizens to make sure that any official tax information, and we'll say that on the envelope, official tax information from the county and from the city, so to make sure that you pay both taxes.
A lot of people understand what happens if you don't pay your taxes over a period of time. If you don't pay the taxes, there's normally our county tax commissioner, Jeff Chapman, would have a tax sale, and they would sell the property on the courthouse steps. That can happen here if it comes to that same level. And because they're two different taxes, county and city, by our charter, our tax commissioner actually is our city clerk, Naomi Atkinson. And so if we get to that point, we certainly hope no one does that. Everyone's going to pay their taxes. But we would hope that it would. But at that point, that really could happen legally by the city code.
That is correct. Naomi Atkinson is our ex officio tax commissioner, as stated in the municipal charter. And what city residents can expect if they pay past the 60-day deadline date to pay their tax bill, what happens is typically maybe 3 to 4 months from that due date, they'll receive several notifications regarding their delinquency. So we have a service that they will receive notifications within, I believe, 30 days, and then they'll have 120 days beyond that point. So we'll definitely be calling, sending notifications to inform the citizens of their delinquencies, and hopefully that we can get that remedied and rectified and resolved so we don't have to put a lien on their property. Now, if there, of course, we have situations where owners change frequently, they've sold the property and that sort of thing. And if that person is you, it's very important to notify the city and the county. We understand there is a process and a lot of paperwork, but it's important to let the city know, as well as the county know, that you have either sold your property, or the property is in trust, or the property the owner is deceased. Any information that we can get so that we're not trying to sell property that should be deeded to someone else or an heir in that sort of circumstance. So in those situations, we do allow for I would say about 4 to 5 months before we even get to the point of a tax sale. So hopefully we never have to do that, but if we do, we will conduct our tax sales accordingly, and they will be at our old City Hall building where we would hold any type of tax sale. Of course, we're required to notify those who will be a part of that, and also a legal notice will be published in the paper. We will follow all the state requirements when it comes to tax sales. But hopefully we don't have to do that. So we encourage citizens to be aware and cognizant of the new tax department and the new billing that they're going to receive. So we're very enthusiastic about the process that we have established, and we're ready to go.
Well, Tina, is there anything else that you think the public should know?
Well, I would just like to say to the citizens of Brunswick that we are excited to work with you, and we're hoping that this will be a pleasant experience for you. But I would like to say again, my name is Tina Edwards. I'm here to assist in any way that I can. I can be reached at City Hall. My number is area code 912-267-5519. My information is also on our Brunswick website. I can be reached by email, by phone, or by person. We also have other staff members that can assist you if I'm unavailable. So I just look forward to working with you, and I hope you have a pleasant experience with our new tax department.
Well, thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you.
Our next guest is Planning, Development, and Codes Director Bren Dice. And Bren, you've been on the program before a couple times.
I have. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah,
Jim.
It's good to have you. I know today we're going to talk a little bit about planning and some of the plans for the future. And we've done that in some of our earlier programs. But today we're facing a deadline for our comprehensive plan, and that's something everybody's watching. What are we going to do different, and how are we going to organize this, and I guess what are the next 5 to 10 years going to be like in Brunswick?
Yeah, absolutely. We are working on our comprehensive plan for the City of Brunswick, and it is due at the end of October. And we are right on schedule for finishing it on time. I'm really excited about this plan. I've actually written several plans in the past with other communities, but I really felt like Brunswick was a fun plan to write because we are so plan forward in this city that we were able to take all of our existing plans and put them together into this comprehensive document. One of the things that I've heard, not just in Brunswick, but certainly in my entire career, is the idea is not to write a plan just for the sake of having a plan and then put it on the shelf. And that is exactly the opposite of what we're doing here. We have plans that we've written over the past 5 to 10 years, even as recently as this year, that have been updated, and we are putting those together in a document that makes sense, and from that document we can build a work program which gives us goals for the short and longer term.
Well, and you talk about the different plans, and it's kind of exciting because a lot of communities have very general comprehensive plans. They look at transportation, they might look at a few elements. We have some really detailed plans for certain neighborhoods, whether it's downtown or the Norwich Street corridor. And I know we've gone through some of the plans in the past, but this really puts a lot of detail to our plan. I think that makes it a very high quality plan, don't you?
Absolutely. One of the sections of our comprehensive plan that is required by the state of Georgia is character areas. So that really describes what each neighborhood has going for it, what kind of development is there, what kind of development we want to see in the future, and implementation measures for a plan for the future. And in each of those character areas, I was able to add multiple smaller plans that have already been adopted by the City Commission, such as the Norwich Corridor, which had a plan in the early 2000s that's being updated currently. The Altama Corridor has a plan that was updated in 2018. And so there's no reason, again, to reinvent the wheel there. We are able to take those plans and put them together. And the state of Georgia also requires a transportation section. We have the Brunswick Area Transportation Study that we work with Glenn County on. And other great ideas, policies that the city has, such as the comprehensive complete streets ordinance that we passed last year, that the commission passed last year.
Yes.
I didn't pass it. And sure. Other plans like that that really just make this comprehensive planning process a lot easier, because the commission and the city has really thought about each individual neighborhood and how we want them to grow.
Well, let's touch on transportation for a moment, since you mentioned it. When you talk about complete streets, I mean, it's really promoting walkability, it's promoting bike lanes. Whether it's a separate trail, and that's also another element that we have, because we're looking at expanding our trail system throughout the city, which people are watching under construction on Highway 17, but, and hopefully to spread elsewhere in the city, but you're also looking at bike lanes in certain corridors.
We are. The Complete Streets policy that was passed last spring, I believe, really talked about how we need to think about all users when we're talking about transportation. So that may include public transportation, it includes pedestrians and bicycles and wheelchairs. It's just saying the road is not just for cars, it's for everyone. So how do we plan that? And that policy actually requires that the city consider all users when we do any kind of road work transportation plan. Our city engineer is working on repaving and restriping some streets now. And as we go through those repaving plans, we have to consider those additional users. And this is a really neat opportunity to add bike lanes, work with the East Coast Greenway trail system that goes through the city of Brunswick and all up the coast of the United States. And so we have really neat new opportunities that weren't around 10, 20 years ago with that policy.
Well, and I know looking at walkability, transportation, bike lanes, maybe getting in a little bit of a neighborhood, we recently had some work done. We had the RSVP plan for downtown, but we've also had the Congress for New Urbanism look at our community, and they looked at the Norwich Street corridor, which is a really unique plan of a bike lane. And I know that report hasn't totally come out yet, but there has been some discussion about how that might be redesigned or rethink, redevelop that Norwich Street corridor. Can you maybe touch on that a little?
Yeah, absolutely. The Norwich Street corridor is a great opportunity for us to focus our efforts on not only the building stock, the vacant parcels that are out there, but also the street itself. So we are looking at adding street furniture, like trash cans and benches. We're also looking at a bike lane. And the way that when we studied the traffic load on Norwich Street, we realized that there's not as much traffic as perhaps it was designed for, because it was originally US Route 17. So now that we have a little bit less traffic on that road, we can perhaps shrink the lanes down, look at removing some of those turning lanes that aren't used very often, and use that space for a designated bike lane. And that actually may be both, it may be a bike boulevard, which kind of puts both of those direction lanes on one side of the street to kind of separate the bicycles and say, here's their area and here's the car area.
And I think some people say, is there really that much bicycle traffic in Brunswick? And there is, honestly. I mean, a lot of people are out there, whether they're kids or they're college students. We have a lot of adults that use bicycles as transportation throughout the city, and so that is a major north-south corridor in the community, and that would make a big difference, I think.
Exactly. And you know, putting a safe place for bicycles is so important, especially to connect, like you said, the north end of the city to the south end of the city. That can be a connection to Fletsy and to the college and the hospital. And how do we bring those folks who are on bicycles downtown safely? We do it by really thinking about where to direct them and where to perhaps not put bike lanes on higher velocity roads.
Right. And a good point. With the college there, a lot of students these days don't have cars. A lot of people don't want cars because of the cost and the insurance. It's a great way to maybe have an avenue to allow college students to make their ways downtown and other parts of the city.
Absolutely.
So
we're excited about that connection. And I hope to see, I know that we are going to see some kickoff events on Norwich Street in the month of September. And keep watch, because we're excited about Norwich Street. We've gotten several grants for that street, and good things are happening there.
Absolutely. The planning process. You see, historically, a lot of plans are created, and some people say they're on the shelf. And people wonder, well, there's been a plan. Why doesn't the city put $1 million to it and enforce the plan? But a lot of the development plans are not for the city to enact in a park or on a public street. Some are, like the Norwich Street corridor, but others are actually development guidelines that are put in place for developers for when they come in. Over time, their development can make an impact. Is that correct?
Absolutely. There are certainly plans that the city has written that are looking at future development. And that is not to say we're looking at tearing down a bunch of properties and requiring them to rebuild. But in the future, when the opportunity comes and someone says, I'd like to build something new, we can say, based on design guidelines that are adopted by the city, this is what we want new development to look like. This is what the city has concentrated on and planned.
And if you have a plan, the character will change over time. It's not that city government has a role to go out and buy an old shopping center and revamp it as the owner. I mean, that would put us, the city, into a very strong real estate business. But it's our goal to guide these developers as they come in and really make those changes.
Absolutely.
Now, on the other hand, we've had other plans that are very active that we are to be involved in, such as the RSVP plan. When I say that, it doesn't mean, again, that here's your plan, city, you better go take a loan at the bank to be able to implement it. It really actually, RSVP, when it came through, and that was through the Carl Vinson Institute, I believe, they actually put assignments to different community groups, including the city, but also nonprofit organizations and other community organizations, the DDA, to make improvements. They were actually, I don't know, charged with the enforcement of that clause.
The RSVP plan was a really neat plan that RSVP stands for Renaissance Strategic Visioning Plan, and the Carl Vinson Institute came here last year and looked at, and I believe the year before actually, about a year-long process, and looked at how can we set smaller goals that are achievable, that have people's names associated with them or people's departments associated with them, so that we can incrementally move forward and not need this 30-year plan that is a pie in the sky someday. So that's a really neat plan that we've incorporated into our comprehensive plan, and that also, we're taking those action items and adding that to our work program, which is that to-do list, for lack of a better word, at the end of this plan, so that we are organized with what our next steps are.
And the great part of the plan was that a lot of the organizations got the to-do list or the responsibility list. It wasn't all put on one entity or the city government or private businesses. It actually is something, when I think it came to be, it was, this is our opportunity that we, the community, are going to make the change. We're not waiting for the developer to come in someday.
Exactly. And I've said that a couple times with a couple different plans. I think it's important to remember in Brunswick that it would be fantastic if someone came in with $20 million and invested in a street, a block, a commercial center. But if that doesn't happen, how can we still improve? So incremental, smaller stage improvements will make a big difference in the future.
Very true. And I'm going to probably back up a little with transportation. I kind of passed by that when we talked. I know working with the county's transportation committee, we're looking at the potential of bus service.
We are.
And I know that's still an up in the air topic. It's been probably studied for 20 years off and on, and hopefully it's going to come around for another round. But we have a lot of residents that don't have transportation. We mentioned the college students earlier. We've got some low-income people, again, who potentially don't have a vehicle, but they do need to get to work. They do need to get to the store. They do need to get to the doctor. We have the elderly, who, again, they may have a car, but maybe they're not able to drive it. And so this public transportation could make a difference.
Absolutely. And I think that it was studied a little bit more in depth right before the recession hit, and now that we are out of that recession, we're able to continue that research, and those transportation options may not be what we're typically thinking of. We're not New York City. We don't need a subway. But what could we use in our small city that helps folks get around easier? It could be a small busing system. It could be using some kind of supplemental payment for Uber or Lyft. It could be
or taxis.
It could be an increase in bike availability, and whether that means bike rentals or something like that, and also improving our sidewalks so that there are multiple ways of getting around the city easier.
All right, that sounds really good. I'm glad. I'm looking forward to hearing the study, what comes out of that.
Thank you.
You have other elements as well. I mean, tell us a little bit more about what you're looking in the time, a little bit more of the process. This was not something that city staff members or consultants sat in a room and carved this plan out. This is something that had a lot of public input.
Right, it did. So we've been working on this for a little over a year now, specifically on this comprehensive planning process. Again, it's due in October from the state of Georgia, and we are right on schedule with that. And we have held multiple community input meetings, as well as brought a steering committee and stakeholder committee together to really help hash out what is missing from the plan, what needs to be updated on the plan. And so all of our elements, all of our chapters had specific topics, and a lot of our plans fit into those topics. And so it was organizing and then bringing that back out to the public and saying, is this what you've said? Does this still make sense? And we've gotten a pretty good response with this comprehensive plan. I always enjoy just sitting with the public. In fact, one of our meetings, maybe in June, was just a big group in Old City Hall who sat and had a conversation with us about, I told them about the plan and gave them the outline of what we have, and then they gave input on that. It was a great conversation.
It's brought a lot of good ideas in.
Absolutely. And all of those elements will go into the plan in the chapter on community input, whether that means they're in the work program. A lot of those ideas are reflected in our to-do list. And some of those ideas may have been larger picture ideas that we're still putting in the document in the public input section.
Part of it includes infrastructure, and I know just recently we adopted a stormwater utility. And not that we didn't have stormwater issues or stormwater improvements prior to the stormwater utility, we have, but it's going to provide an opportunity to do much greater improvements to our stormwater system. And without improvements to infrastructure, really a lot of these other plans could never happen in the next 5 to 10 years.
Absolutely.
And so you've kind of included that in those parts of how do we repair our very old city. I mean, a lot of communities are aging throughout the country. We originally were a colonial city. We have a lot of infrastructure from the 1800s and the early 1900s still here to work with. And so you've included elements like that as well.
Yeah, the stormwater section will talk about the stormwater utility plan that has just been adopted at the city, and how and what that means in real life. And Tina talked about that a little bit in her segment of how it will be collected, how the fees will be collected. But in the boots on the ground real life scenario, that means those funds that we collect from residents and businesses will be able to be used for infrastructure projects. And that's also reflected in our work program and that to-do list. That's an important way to say, here's where we're getting the funds and here's how we're spending them, which is good to have accountability to the citizens. So it's all spelled out there in the plan.
Okay. Is there anything in the comp plan process that we haven't talked about you think our citizens should know?
September 5th, which may or may not be before this airs, there is a public hearing. And that public hearing will look at the draft that we have. There is a draft online that you can go check out on the city's website. There's a link that says 2018 Comprehensive Plan, and you're welcome to check that out and give feedback. But on September 5th, we are getting the okay from the City Commission to pass that along to the state. And so we'll be passing that along to the Coastal Regional Commission and DCA, and they will give us additional feedback so that we can get all of that feedback collected, do all of our edits, and pass it by the end of October. So we're on schedule with the state of Georgia.
So if people have comments, they could definitely call your office, and once they reviewed it. And
absolutely. All the planning documents are on the website. It's a really useful tool. And what we'd like to do is actually keep that website up to date. Even after we've passed the comprehensive plan, we'd like to have the website still be organized, and honestly, I'd like to see it be updated periodically when necessary, not just when it's required by the state of Georgia, but to update it saying we've come up with a new plan and it should be included in our big comprehensive plan.
Yeah. Now, being a city government, we're also within a county. And I guess we've had some inter-coordination. I know you've worked a lot with the county's comprehensive plan committee. It is a total separate document. But we have to, it's not like there's this magical wall that you cross the gates to the city, to the county. I mean, we do have some borders and inter-coordination with that. I believe the county's had some interaction with us as well.
Both the city's comprehensive plan and the county's comprehensive plan, which are two separate documents, have included the other municipality on their stakeholder committees. So that's really important, I think, because as you know, we're government, we know where the lines are pretty much. Glen Ave, I get a little iffy as to which parcel is which with the city and county boundary. However, most people don't really know exactly where the city starts and the county begins, or vice versa. So it's important for us to coordinate with the county on our planning efforts. And we have done a pretty good job of that, I think, with working with the county planning department and community development department, and just really being aware and up to date as to the process that each municipality is using. Also, that reflects in things like Glen Ave, which extends into the county, and Norwich Street, that as we're preparing a Norwich Street plan, Norwich Street, as you know, stops around 5th Street, and then there are several other street blocks above it. So
that are outside the city, correct?
That are outside the city limits, but still deserve a plan as well. So it makes sense to coordinate with the county for those things.
And I'm glad we've done that. And I think that's, I'm not certain it's a requirement of the state, but it's something that definitely makes a more quality community.
Agreed.
So, okay, well, very good. Thank you, Bren, for being on the program again and explaining our comprehensive plan. I think our public has learned a little bit. I think they've heard a lot in the press about the county's plan, but sometimes the press doesn't always cover what the city's doing, and that's an opportunity for people to learn about our comprehensive plan, and then the ability that they want to check it out in detail, it's online.
Absolutely. Check us out online. There's also a website if you'd like, or an email address on that website if you'd like to email and give us additional feedback. That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of things are happening in the city of Brunswick, and today you had a little bit of insight of what helps make our city operate. And so we're happy that you've joined us today and look forward to next month's segment.
Hi, this is Matthew Hill with the Brunswick Downtown Development Authority. According to our most recent Facebook poll, the top 5 things to do in Brunswick are, number 1, dining. We have a wide variety of cuisine available at Brunswick's fine restaurants. Number 2, live music. Whether it's a band at Tipsy's, Rhythm on the River, or a performance at the Ritz, there's a music style for everyone. Number 3, events. Events like First Friday, the Stubilee, Coast Fest, there's always something happening downtown. Number 4, antiquing. Whether it's shops downtown like Antiques Etc., Victorian Place, or Brown's Antiques, or on Norwich Street, Cassie's Closet, there's a treasure to be found for everyone. And number 5, parks. From our intimate downtown squares to Mary Ross and Coffin Park, there's a green space to enjoy nearby. Events in September include Rhythm on the River on Sunday, September the 2nd from 6 to 8 p.m. at Mary Ross Waterfront Park. This month featuring Squirt Gun. Bring your chair or blanket, your picnic, and your favorite beverage to this free community event. First Friday, on Friday, September the 7th from 5 to 8 p.m. on Newcastle Street. Shop at our downtown merchants, check out the latest at the Ritz, grab a bite, and quench your thirst at one of our restaurants. The International Paddling Film Festival, September the 9th from 2 to 5 p.m. at the Ritz Theater, an international adventure film tour presenting the world's best paddling films of the year. The United States Air Force Band of the West Mission Winds, September the 21st at the Ritz. Mission Winds is the clarinet quartet from the U.S. Air Force Band of the West. And Shame the Devil, an audience with Fanny Kemble, September 27th to the 30th and October 6th and 7th at the Ritz. An entertaining look at the 19th century English actors who spent time here in our area.